How's it going, everyone? John here, the host of Spear Talk. You might not know this, but before I record an episode, I like to break a sweat. And I do that using the Chop Fit. Over the course of the past year, the Chop Fit has allowed me to lose weight, tone up my body, and feel even more amazing about myself. A feeling that you should all feel about yourselves as well. If you use this code, SpearChop10, you get $10 off your order. Once again, use code SpearChop10 for $10 off your Chop Fit order. It'll change your life. Thank you. How's it going, everyone? John here, the host of Spear Talk, and once again, we are bringing to you two amazing guests. Keith Cooke, Keith Hirabayashi, he's been on the show. This will be his third time, and once again, the incredible Kenn Scott, who recently was just on here. I wanted to put together this kind of cool idea of merging the pop culture, the world of Mortal Kombat, and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and I couldn't think of two better people, not only incredible martial artists, stuntmen, actors, but really down-to-earth, solid people. And so, Keith and Scott and Kenn, it's great to have you on here.
Thanks, it's great to be here. Sorry to Keith.
And so, yeah, so like I told you guys before I started recording, I got these messages from people saying, man, you can have Keith on board because he tells all these stories about fight choreography and fighting and killing kickboxers and all these stories and all these tournaments and the wushu. And then when I launched the episode with Kenn, I got the same thing. It's like, oh my God, I had no idea this guy was in Showdown. I had no idea this guy did all the stuff with the Ninja Turtles, his new book. And so I figured, you know what, for the month of December, I always put together two previous guests for the last year. And I figured, why not merge together both these pop culture, Mortal Kombat, Ninja Turtles? So again, thank you guys for being here.
Fantastic idea.
And so I kind of want to start with this. Obviously, the last couple of years, we know it's been crazy with the pandemic and everything, but conventions are starting to get back together. And it's cool seeing people on social media share their feelings and their pictures with some of these stars like yourselves. And if we kind of lead off with, when you guys, especially, I guess I'll start with you, Kenn, as you get back into these things full swing, how cool is it to see these fans that have been maybe dealing with mental health or different issues the last year or so, have been missing taking pictures, or actually just getting to spend 5 minutes with you?
Man, it's a big question. There's a lot of stuff there. I'll try to encapsulate it, because one of the things that I find the most beautiful about going to Comic-Cons is experiencing people who are living their best life. They're living their dream. You can watch, a 45-year-old out of shape guy in a skin tight Spider-Man outfit with a shopping bag full of stuff, living his dream, walking through this place. And they're loving it. They're amongst people that accept what they want to do, and they allow them to express themselves from the inside out. I love that at cons so much. And you see it across the spectrum of humanity. You see somebody who never gets out, who might be dealing with somewhere on the autism spectrum or thing. I mean, there's a lot of that. And then you're dealing with, military guys and cops and this whole other side of things. And in between there, you get all these people who are coming to you, and they're able to express their love, or they try to express their love to you about what you've done and what it's meant to them. And to see that come out, I've had people break down in tears and just want hugs and things that I don't feel worthy of, but it's amazing to experience. And then when you're able to sort of give all that back and relate on that level with them, it's a beautiful connective experience. And it's great to be part of that. So now as the pandemic comes to an end, especially early in April, when people started to just rush out of the gates before everybody kind of comes back in, man, it was great. The cons were flooded. The gates were doing more than people thought they ever would. People just couldn't wait to get out and get back in costumes. It was like a breath of fresh air. So hopefully that'll continue as much as possible. And that gives everybody the chance to blossom, from the promoters who are trying to throw the cons to the people who want to come there and meet, their quote unquote heroes and have that opportunity. And then what it means for those people who get to be met like that.
And I love that. And I know, Keith, as you kind of get ready to start doing some of these yourselves, you've been able to play Sub-Sero in Mortal Kombat 2, Reptile in Mortal Kombat. So you've played these characters that people grew up with, impacted their lives from kids. Now they have kids that are impacted by your roles and your stuff you've done. Is it something where you're kind of anxious to kind of realize it? Obviously, you have your fans and your supporters, but when you finally get out there to see some kid who's 9 and is autistic, or an adult that was an addict that you saved their life, for whatever reason they started following your movies or whatever, how impactful for you is that when you get out there?
I think it's, like it's an honor actually, and I was surprised, and shocked that I would even have such an opportunity to do these things, and met a lot of interesting people. Like, let's start with Carrie, with her 2 kids. And I'll give you an example of something that happened was, we were talking, and we actually did one of those Q&A sessions together, and we were getting to know each other. And she's really on top of her whole social media thing. She is an expert, and I was like, well, I have to learn some of these things from you because I know absolutely nothing, And I go, I am a social media retard. And she goes, oh my God, don't use that word. And I had no idea that she had the 2 special needs sons, because, I don't go around calling other people retards, but I do call myself a retard from, now and again. And now from now on, I'm going to catch myself because of that one incident. But I met a family where they named all their kids after Mortal Kombat characters,
Wow.
Yeah. And, can you sign this to Raiden, please? And I was like, oh my God, is that really your name? And this is Sub-Sero over here. But, I met some really interesting people, and, it's amazing. I've had, like a mom, come up and want to take her picture with me, who said she grew up on Mortal Kombat, and she's taking a picture with me and she's shaking, and I was like, wow, man, this is, you don't know what it means to people, you sort of, you forget and you take it for granted, and nobody ever cared in my, like my martial arts studio, nobody ever cared if I played Sub-Zero or anything, but there's a lot of people out there that really do, and so.
And it is fascinating that the legacy that you both are part of, where I think Mortal Kombat came out in 94, 95, that the first game, whatever, Ninja Turtles before that. And you're kind of just like, to withstand the test of time, you are part of the lore of these characters, whether it's cartoon, video game, movie. But to see that the actual brands themselves, there's still new movies coming, there's new comic books, new TV shows, new merch, and for you guys to be so steeped into that, it has to be really cool that 10, 20 years from now, you're still going to be Raphael from Secret of the Ooze. You're still going to be Reptile. So again, it is really cool to have you both here, and that you guys have the impact you do on people's lives. It is really cool.
Keith, have you met people that have tattoos of your character?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right? There was a guy who showed up with a reptile tattoo on his leg. So, yeah, I don't know.
Were you ever like, hey, who is that? You're like, it's you. You're like, oh God. And I know as we kind of move in, we get the conventions and all that going. I want to step back though, because in our pre-emails to each other, what my idea of bringing you both together, I know, Ken, you talked about watching people like Keith on the martial arts, the tournament circuit back in the day. And for me, I grew up I was born in 85, and through the 90s, when I went to the grocery store with my parents, I always go to the magazine aisle and I'd pick up the new Black Belt magazine. And for me, that was my way to be like, man, these are real life superheroes. These are real life people. And as I get older now, here I am, 36. I go by the magazine section. There's no magazines there about the martial arts. There's no anything like this. And then the only time I can really get my fix is if I go search for it or follow these actual martial artists themselves. And so could you kind of elaborate, Ken, as a fan of someone like Keith, how do you deal with how could someone like you and I find the next Keith Cooke who's doing the same tournaments or is really good at wushu? How do we find these people, Ken?
Man, I'll tell you what, that's a very good question. I grew up going by the newsstand, and I'd get Karate Illustrated, Black Belt, and Inside Kung Fu. And those are the 3 that I got. And then once I moved to Los Angeles, man, you could find these obscure like the Tai Chi quarterly publication, these weird things. But yeah, I used to take those, and that's how I got to know Keith and George Chung and the West Coast demo team and Cynthia Rothrock when she was doing all her stuff, and just on and on. Like even some out of Texas, I live in Texas now. So I remember Steve Nasty Anderson and Linda Denley, and these were the names that were kind of floating around. Today, there's not a lot of magazines at all left anymore because of the internet. There's so much stuff that's accessible to you. And I don't really have the answer to your question, John, but recently I enrolled in a karate school for the first time in a long time, so I could learn some new things and all this. And it just so happens that I'm there. They said, oh, we're going to be closed next week. We're going to a tournament. And I thought, my God, I haven't been to a karate tournament in decades. I mean, decades it's been. And so I was like, oh, I can't wait. Well, it turned out I went to a con in Alabama that weekend, so I didn't get to go. But I was like, oh, what an interesting doorway that's opened up for me to now go so many years later, walk into a gymnasium and see what's happening and see what's going on. Outside of peeking my head through that door, which is you can only see so far, I don't know where to find the next person other than TikTok and YouTube.
And how do we find these people, Keith? And like, obviously, for the moment you had your last tournament, has there been like, when you stopped doing it, were you still following the tournament circuit themselves? Were you still following the athletes? Like, how did you kind of deal with you not actually physically being part of this stuff, but were you able to actually kind of just still watch and be a presence at these?
I really lost contact with that for a long time. And then when the COVID thing, because I was on a couple of teams, professional teams that were sponsored, and first by Budweiser, and
Perfect.
That was the Budweiser national karate team, and Billy Blanks was on there, Nasty Anderson was on there, Linda Denley was on there, yeah. And then that's pretty much that same group of people got moved to a new sponsor because I don't know why Budweiser didn't want to do it anymore, or if this other company offered us a better deal, but it was called the Atlantic World Karate Team. And that was the best thing that ever happened to me, And, but my point is that I've stayed in contact with some of my teammates, and some of them are still very active in that and had continued competing. Like Steve Nasty Anderson passed away recently.
Oh.
And so did, I don't know if you know who Kevin Thompson was. They used to call him Little K.A. He's just an awesome martial artist. He was one of my favorite martial artists of all time. And man, he could box. I mean, he could just do it all, and he was one of my teammates. I got to work out with this guy, and he unfortunately passed away also from Lou Gehrig's disease. And my coach, I just found out, just passed away. I just found out today. So Chuck Merriman, who gave me so many opportunities, but how would I do it? I would probably try to find some of the people who are competing right now and find out how they, I'm still in contact with Chris Casamasas, who played Scorpion, and he's very active and runs a lot of tournaments. He runs a big one out here that sometimes I take students to. And so I've seen some of what is going on just when I take my students, because we don't really travel far anymore, but we did go to the, I forget what the name of the tournament is, but it's a big national tournament that takes place in Los Angeles. And then I like going to Chris's smaller tournaments that he puts on too, taking students there. But I was sort of tournamented out for a while. I went to so many tournaments, man. I used to go to a tournament every other weekend. So for years,
Yeah, interesting. And so when these, obviously, Keith, you're a teacher, you're an instructor, and Ken, obviously, you're getting back into it. But is the way they recruit kids or adults, whoever, to start learning the martial arts? What's the biggest issue they've come across in gyms where it's getting people to stay committed? Or is this one of those things where people just treat martial arts as I'm going to drop you off, go hang with Keith for an hour, I'll pick you up, I'm working, or something like that? Because for me, I think there's so much more to it. Like, take out the actual physicality of it. What you learn from with your mental strength and all that could change your life and save a life. But do you think the way that these schools or people are marketing the martial arts is maybe a hindrance to actually filling their classrooms up with people?
You want to take that?
Yeah, take that one, Keith.
You know, I found, you know, that there's some parents out there that they're just looking for their kid to get that that black belt on their resume. You know, they don't really, you know, and a lot of kids, and because, you know, kind of, you know, it was fortunate and unfortunate that my studio was in a very wealthy neighborhood, that most of these kids would go away for college. And so I'd have them up until they graduated from high school. And then some of them I'd never see them again. Some of them would come back and visit. Some of them would move back to LA later, you know, and start training again. But I always felt like I had to realize that that's where it was going to stop. But my hope is, and I think you kind of touched on this, that what we're doing there, you know, because, you know, the self-defense part, the fighting part is, I think, important, because it's, I think, if you're going to learn martial arts, yeah, that's a really important part of it, because I think it builds character. You know, like, you know, taking a few punches in the face, you know, getting gutted a few times, you know, and having to get back up, you know, it builds character, you know. And I want my kids, if anything else, to get at least a little bit tougher, you know, through their experience. And so I always made everybody spar, you know, and in fact, you know, give them tools so they can really do it and feel confident about it. You know, like the way that you give them drills, you drill them hard, you know, on offensive and defensive drills. You know, a lot of places probably don't teach enough defense, you know, so
Right.
to where people feel really comfortable when they're under fire and stuff like that. But I found that the traffic is getting worse and worse in LA, and parents were less willing to bring their kids as often as we were open there for 27 years. And the schools, there were a lot of private schools around there that were getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And the traffic was just getting worse right at the time when we needed to do business. But I do think that, back to what you were touching on, I think if anything, if, you know, people learn, one of my favorite things to say is, you know, don't use tired as an excuse, because how often in life are we going to be tired? And that can't be an excuse for poor performance. You know, how often are you tired and you have to do a podcast, you know,
Right.
and you want to do it with show up with a great attitude and stuff. And I've had to learn, you know, to do that. And if a kid can learn that through training in martial arts, you know, I always say it's a great way to wake up, you know, a great way to wake up, come to class. I'm so tired. You were at school all day. Maybe you already had PE or played a sport and now you're here. And so I think it's a great opportunity to learn how not to quit when things get tough, you know, and that's that self-discipline thing, you know, and that's the thing that we really try to drive home, and kids get it, you know, because how often are you going to fight someone, you know?
Right.
But how often do you need self-discipline? Every day.
Oh, yeah. You're going to fight yourself more than you will a crowd of people.
Exactly.
So, Ken, one of the things after your episode aired, everyone was blown away by the idea that, man, 4 people have to play a turtle, the puppeteer, the voice, whoever, then you were in the middle. So one of the big questions we had is, in The Secret of the Ooze, the last battle scene, you got Super Shredder, you got Splinter, you got Bebop, Rocksteady, all this stuff going on, this mayhem, foot soldiers. How tough is it, or what is the process between you as a performer and working with someone like, say, Pat Johnson, putting a fight scene of that scale together, and specifically in a costume, as opposed to, say, maybe Keith, who could do it outside of a costume?
You know, the process was not unsimilar to whatever Keith was doing. It all works out the same. It's a very creative process. It's really where the martial arts gets a chance to be artistic in its own sort of gymnastic appeal kind of way. What would happen ordinarily is, you know, specifically on Ninja Turtles, we'll go through that, is they had a complete storyboard of the film going in. And so Pat Johnson, the stunt coordinator, fight choreographer, he actually was the fight choreographer. He had his storyboard out there. And basically he looked at it and he said, okay, how can we create each one of these frames and what action brings us to whatever it is that we're going to do? And then basically he would say, okay, what is it that you guys want to do? What can you do? What do you see? He wouldn't just come in and say, I want you to do this, 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 and this, like here's the dance. He would ask each performer, hey, what do you think? What can you do? What's a good move? What do you feel comfortable? What's your best thing? And once everybody started to kind of give stuff in, then like a master puzzle, assemblist or an alchemist, he would start to put the pieces together. And sometimes there would already be ideas based on certain effects that needed to happen or wire work gags that they knew they were going to do. That was kind of determined how we would get into it. But otherwise, the entire interstitial nature of the combat that flowed in between those sort of moments happened very artistically and very collaboratively, but ultimately you bowed down to whatever the choreographer said. Okay, we're going to do this, this, this. No, I do this great jump spinning hook kick. No, you'll do that later. Right now, I need you to go do this. So just through that collaborative process, as we went through it, Pat Johnson specifically had an assistant, Barbara Goldstone, and she had a big yellow legal pad and a pen. And as we went through stuff, Pat would go, write that down. And he would say, okay, it's a punch to the left and this, and then a duck, and then Bob does this. And so ultimately, the whole thing would kind of get written out in shorthand. And then as the next few days and weeks went by up to shooting time, we would just revisit that and every day do it like a kata until it got better and better and better until the time we got to go before the camera. And sometimes it was instantaneous. We didn't have times that we could warm it up. Oftentimes we'd have to do it on the fly. But things like that, with the big scene with Super Shredder, had time to plan it out, work it out, and then get it right.
Now, for you, Keith, one of my favorite movies is King of the Kickboxers, and I know you've talked about this before on the podcast. But the scene where you kind of get introduced, you kind of the drunken monk character, and you talked about Corey Yoon coming on set and directing this really iconic martial arts scene in a movie. But for something like that, how does he know who his performers are going to be, or is he so good that he could be like, you know what, if it's not Keith doing wushu, it's Lauren doing this Hapkido, it's Ken doing Tang Soo Do? Like, how good of someone like Corey could take someone who wasn't you to put him in that scene? Like, how it blows my mind that obviously you were the ideal for that role, but for someone like Corey to use a martial art to fit the scene, is it tough unless he knows the performer like you?
I don't think he knew me. I mean, I don't know if he saw anything that I'd done previously. Really, the only thing I'd done previously was China O'Brien at that time. And so he may have seen that because, there were other, it was a Golden Harvest, a Hong Kong production. He may have been able to see that. But other than that, they might have told him about me and what they wanted. Like, they didn't want me to punch. They wanted me to kick, and, but he, I think he I think just, wanted me to feel comfortable, and so he asked me, hey, I'm going to have these guys are going to come at you here. What would you do? And I said, well, I would do this. And he would say, oh, that'd be great. Yeah. And, he said, and then these guys are going to come from over here. What are you going to do? And then he starts thinking about how he's going to put the cameras in order to capture that. And in fact, and then he asked me, can you hold your foot out like this and then bring it around this way like Bruce Lee did in Enter the Dragon? I was like, yeah, I think I can do that because I've tried it so many times. Trying to act like Bruce Lee. And so he had me bring my foot around, and he had put the camera on tracks and had the camera move around me in an arc the other way. It was just, I loved that experience because we shot it in like, I want to say choreographed it, shot it, everything in about 5 hours, maybe something like that. It wasn't a big deal, it's a pretty big fight though, to be able to do that like that. And then there you have somebody who knows what they want and knows how to get it done, And I think he is a craftsman, And I'm very lucky to have been able to experience that with him. And the set got so quiet and it started operating because they have the regular director who directs the acting, the drama director. That's what they do in Hong Kong. And then they have an action director, and he was like the action director. But the way that you could tell the respect that he had already earned at that time, because all of a sudden everybody was like, like soldiers, and it was amazing to see that.
Keith, what I was amazed by on the first movie in Ninja Turtles, when I was doing stunt work for Raphael, we were working with a lot of guys from Hong Kong that Golden Harvest had brought over.
Right.
There were 3 or 4 guys that were doing the turtle work, the stunt work. That was my first opportunity. I was fresh out of college. So it was the first time I'd ever worked with anybody like that. And the first time as a martial artist, I was really encountering, guys that were hardcore out of Hong Kong movie level stuff.
Right.
I was fascinated and amazed at how quickly they could choreograph and remember a fight scene like that. In a heartbeat, or they would just be like, you do this. They just explain it a couple of times, and then they were able to do it. Amazing.
Yeah. They're very sharp that way. It's like, when you see a really good musician who all of a sudden can just jump right in and play along in a song or something like that. They are like that. Yeah. And, one of my experiences too, that, I worked with a lot of guys from Hong Kong on China O'Brien, but the thing on King of the Kickboxers was, that scene that I did ended with a triple kick into this guy's chest. And Corey asked me, can you jump up and kick this guy 3 times? And I said, yeah, definitely, and I was working with the original guy that they put there was from Thailand, and we shot in Thailand. So he was a local stuntman, and he couldn't stay there, hold me there to take. So he kept getting like knocked by the first kick. And so I couldn't land the other 2. And they kept saying, we need you to stand there, And then this guy, one of the Hong Kong stuntmen says, I can do it. And so first take, bam, 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 and he just stood there for the first 2 and took them, and then did the reaction on that last one. And it was just, it's just that kind of thing. That same guy too, when he fell off that staircase and he landed right on his side, and it was hard dirt, there was no pads or anything because they wanted to see him land. And he did it in 1 take, thank God, because
yeah, he had to.
Definitely hurt, So
I love that. And so the question with both of you, but I'll start with you, Ken. One, obviously you've worked with Cynthia Rothrock's Word to Justice, Billy Blanks, and the cult classic Showdown. When you work with martial artists like that who are world renowned and stuff, obviously it helps you up your personal game and stuff like that on set and stuff. But could you kind of talk about specifically Billy Blanks working with someone like that, who world champion? Don't even talk about what he's doing now, which is amazing. But as you're going through these movies and going up through the scene, to have the work with someone like that, what are you getting from someone like Billy Blanks in terms of from your personal takeaway and from like your takeaway from the actual movie itself?
Well, first of all, for me, it was a chance to, again, just like I knew Keith from afar growing up as sort of this, quasi celebrity through the magazines. He was a martial arts celebrity. Still is, but to me growing up, there he was doing his thing. Billy Blanks was of that same ilk, the covers of magazines, all that kind of stuff. And at that point, he was the snarling villain in King of the Kickboxers, right? And he had done all these movies. So he had achieved this level of, sort of celebrity that those late 80s and early 90s kind of offered martial artists through the independent film market. And Billy Blanks was he was right up there as a royal player. So for me, the first thing that happened was just the awesomeness of getting to hang around this guy. He had achieved so much, he'd done so much. He was kind of like an Arnold Schwarzenegger in his own way. He's an athlete, he became a movie star. And so to get the chance to work with him and just feed off of his energy and see what he was about, that was one thing as a student of life. And he was such a nice guy, and he had great positive energy and everything. But then as a martial artist, to watch him work, having only seen him on TV and things like in PK, halftime shows and all that stuff, to then watch him work and do his stuff, it's like I would say it's like a dancer working with Baryshnikov, right? Any of those martial artists at that level, Cynthia Rothrock or Billy Blanks or Keith or anybody, when you get to watch them do their thing and you're a martial artist, you can't just help but be like, wow, look at that. And then you try to pick and choose what you can, like Bruce Lee said, take what's good for you and throw the rest away. I watch every martial artist that I can and look at everything they're doing. And I go, oh, look at that. I wonder if I could do that. And so to see Billy Blanks do that was awesome, to try to absorb it. But then to see Billy Blanks fight that last scene with Patrick Kilpatrick, who plays the bad guy. Patrick's a really eccentric kind of actor. And in fight scenes, which he doesn't do a lot of, he's not afraid to make some contact with whatever he's going to do. So he made some contact with Billy, and Billy was like, well, you don't make contact with me. And so Billy then made contact with Patrick in a very aggressive manner during the fight scene. And a couple of those moments are, on camera. He grabs Patrick by the lapels and he does like a jump spinning back kick, and he pops Patrick Kilpatrick in the ribs to be like, that's how it is. Well, they had choreography, but each time they shot the scene, Billy would change the choreography just a little bit. If he wanted to do a hook kick, he'd do a hook kick. If he wanted to do a jump spinning back kick, he'd do a jump spinning back kick. He just kind of flowed with the situation. And it was so amazing because even though Patrick didn't know what he was going to do, it all still worked. And that was all because Billy knew how to move so well and make his flow go. So totally impressive and educational experience on all those levels.
I had Patrick on the show here too, and just awesome. Like, his stories are great, and he did kind of hint that there's some certain times in my life going through where I learned real quick that these guys are real athletes, and so I can only imagine. I assume that's one of the stories you would share there. And so for you, Keith, obviously you've worked with him, King Kickboxers, Chad O'Brien too. He had that really obscure kind of cameo, which I still don't know why they make it bigger, that movie. But when you work with someone like Keith or Cynthia or Richard Norton, and those type of people, obviously you up your level of game too, but it must be fun walking around sets, be like, oh, I'm a world champion, I'm a champion, I'm a champion, or I'm an A3. So how do you guys kind of keep the ego in check when you both obviously at that alpha level of martial arts?
First of all, I just wanted to say about Billy, that, obviously we go way back, and he can really hit. He's one of the guys, like no doubt this guy, he for a big guy, he was very agile too. He could jump, he was very fast, and the impacts of his, like you were talking about a jump back kick, and I've been kicked by his jump back kick in his studio, just sparring with him, and plus we train together a lot. So I've been kicked by him a lot. And I remember blocking it perfectly, read the kick, and the shock wave from the kick hitting me just went right through my body, like getting stabbed with a sword or something like that. And, I always appreciated that about Billy, and, they're the guys out there that are just trying to get points, and they're the guys that can really hit, and he can really hit, I really enjoyed, that scene in China O'Brien actually was an after, they were trying to get, they came up a little short because we shot China O'Brien 1 and China O'Brien 2 at the same time. So we did that fight scene without a director, without a choreographer. We just had a cameraman and a couple of grips, and we didn't even pay for that location. We just went into an alley, and it was someplace in Los Angeles. I think it might even have been in Beverly Hills. We went into this alley and just started shooting. And so that's why that was such a short cameo for Billy, because it was just an afterthought. And I actually just called him up and say, Billy, will you come fight me for this thing, And I also got those other guys. Actually, Chris Casamassa was
Yes, he was a punk picnic guy too, or something like that.
But just a tremendous guy to work with, and I had a flashback sequence in King of the Kickboxer with him, where because they say that nobody's ever been able to defeat him, and I was the only person. My character was the only one who ever got close, and that's why Lauren's character comes to learn from me, because I was the one who got the closest to beating him. Well, in that scene, he has this kick where he jumps up, his legs come up like this, and they go bam, they hit you on both sides of the head at the same time. And I remember when he did it, I mean, he wants things to look real, and I had to block like this, and both of my arms just got slammed into my head from both sides. And, you act like you're okay because, you don't want to be wimpy or anything, but man, that was, and I'm sure that guy felt it, that guy in the movie with you.
Yeah.
Because, he can go. He was telling me about Michael Biehn, because I used to teach Michael Biehn for years, the actor from the Terminator. And I trained him to get ready for The Abyss. And he was a really good, really good actor, but really good student too, and really trained really hard. And Billy was telling me that, they had a situation like that. And he said he was going to, let's just take it easy and stuff. And Michael didn't take it easy. He went on Billy. And I don't think that went well either.
Yeah.
I love that. Question for you, Ken: is there a difference or similarity if you're an actor that's a martial artist, or a martial artist that is an actor? Can it be the same person, or is there a difference between either one of them?
Well, I mean, that's a really good philosophical question. I appreciate it. Speaking of which, by the way, I want to go back to something you said earlier. And ordinarily, I wouldn't do this, but we are speaking amongst martial artists. You said, "Oh, I'm getting back into it." No, I continuously train. I've recently enrolled in a new school to learn a new system and do different things. So I've continually practiced. So I've been hanging around doing my thing a little bit. But that being said, the reason I bring that up is because that's in reference to your question about being a martial artist, right? And Musashi, who says, "Know the way of all arts," and what you do. And Bruce Lee, who said, "I'm a martial artist first. That's what I am." And then who that person is applies themselves to these other things like acting and all that kind of stuff. So I think when you get right down to it, I think if the truest actor could be the truest martial artist, if they apply the same principles of developing their creative art to one thing or the other. I think it's very easy for people on the outside to go, "Oh, he's an actor who learned martial arts." Like, especially if you learn martial arts for one role or two roles, then you're just sort of equipping yourself to get through a job. But if you practice martial arts as part of your life and it's who you are, and that also informs your acting and allows you to do that thing, then who's to say whether it's actor martial artist or martial artist actor? I like the Bruce Lee thing of martial artist turned actor. For me personally, although both my martial arts and my acting, I consider always the dilettante level, I believe that's what I was or am. I've been a martial artist since I was 12. Keith, I know you probably started before that, but ever since I was 12 years old, it's been the single most defining factor of my life. It informs me as a spiritual being. It gives me a practice to follow, and it's given me opportunities like Ninja Turtles and other things that I never would have had without it. So for me, I kind of I look at it as the martial artist and the actor can coexist. Although you may not do those movies all the time, it still may be there for you.
Right. Love that. One of the things, Keith, at the onset of the pandemic, Keith was one of my first guests on here. We started talking about the art of war and Tao and this actual the English version of the book, The Life of Tao, the Book of Tao. Every day I'll go through and just find different poems or different things he said, and it kind of hit me hard. It's like, headed up as someone like Keith to even introduce me to somebody like Tao, the importance of reading and mental health and just kind of getting ready for the day. And so, Keith, since the last time we've talked, has your preparation for the daily life and stuff, has that changed at all? And how often do you still go back looking at Tao and the different teachings like that could withstand the test of time?
Well, I have it actually sitting on a table where I sit there all the time. It's always there. I'm always reminded of it. The Tao Te Ching. Yeah. I really took that to heart, to the fact that when we have a black belt test at the school, everybody has to learn one of those poems and present it at the black belt test. And it's really amazing. Like sometimes we have fairly young people testing for black belt and they're sort of spouting this wisdom, and it's pretty astounding. And that's how some of my favorite poems from there have really stuck with me. And I think I've lived my life by them. But one of the things that I've kept doing through the pandemic was teaching, even though I end up teaching a lot of Zoom classes, which who knows if that's good for your mental health or not. But I felt sorry for the kids who had to Zoom all day for their school and then take another Zoom with me, you know. This Zoom is going to have a lot more action than your other Zoom. And I started, you know, like I would punch at the screen. You're going to slip this punch, okay? Slip this punch. But one of the things that I've noticed is when I teach my fitness class, I teach a fitness class Zoom every morning still. I did it this morning. And I really enjoy that time after the class where we do a stretch and we breathe. You know, we just breathe and we take some nice deep breaths. And I think that's one of the things that we teach the young kids. You know, what do you do if you're mad and you feel like hitting someone? And the answer is calm down. And what's a good way of calming down? Taking a nice deep breath, you know? And so we also do this thing called the calm and the brave, where you reach up and press your hands down, reach up, inhale and exhale down. It feels kind of like maybe like a Tai Chi breath. But I think a lot of the kids have actually learned to calm down through their practice. And one of the things I like, just referring to the thing about acting, and you know, like I've always felt that some of the worst actors that I've seen were martial arts people trying to act, you know. And I think it may be because, you know, maybe they don't feel as comfortable, you know, like sort of like sharing their emotions or something like that. I do think though that, you know, the word Kung Fu, I don't know if you knew that it doesn't mean martial arts. It means skill. It means that, you know, like acquiring skill through self-discipline. And so you could be Kung Fu at being a chef, you know. And I do think that when you practice something for a long time, like martial arts, you do learn to overcome obstacles and do your research and your practice and stuff like that. And that can be applied. It should be able to be applied to other subjects, you know, because you can go about it in the same way, use the same system of learning and practicing whatever you're trying to practice. And that could be acting, you know. So anyway.
Yeah, I think that if we looked at, you know, you said martial artists, it's uncommon to find a martial artist that we laud critically for their performance in a movie.
Yeah.
And so the thing is, I think you're right, you can apply it, but the thing is, the people that we're watching on screen have been martial artists for 25 years or whatever it is in their lives, and they've been acting for 16 months, you know, to try and get something going. So could they apply themselves in the same way over 16 years to acting, and you could grow that person in a lab somewhere? You'd have the ultimate martial arts hero, you know? And we all start that way, right? When did you start training, Keith? How old were you?
I was 12.
Okay. And when did you get your first inkling that you were going to perform in movies or be on TV or whatever?
It was probably when I was about 20. You know, I mean, that became like a goal that I thought maybe I didn't know how to go about it or anything, but I thought it might be something that I knew it was something I was interested in pursuing, just didn't really know how I was going to do it, you know?
Right on. Yeah, I knew from the time I was like 13 years old that I wanted to be in the movies. And I was like, I was taking acting classes and I was doing the self-defense division in tournaments where you choreograph the fights and do the music and the whole thing. Wow. Everything I could to try to create that reality of, all right, I want to be an action hero in the movie. So yeah, I knew right away. And I tried to create that experiment of growing in the lab, somebody who was doing acting and doing martial arts. And I got to a certain level, but then I had a certain shelf life for half-life.
Now, Kenn, obviously you're an accomplished author. Again, if people haven't read his book, please go read that. Teenage Ninja to Mutant Turtle, Becoming the Reel Ralphael. And so, as an accomplished author, is there other authors or passages or stories or something like Art of War that you look up to every day? Or is this one of these things where you kind of just, what you've taken in, you just let it come to you like that?
Look, in all honesty, Keith kind of stole my answer. I mean, I study Taoism, and like we all do when we get into martial arts, you open yourselves to Eastern thought, different, you know. So I've been studying Bushido and Buddhism and all these things for years and years, ultimately getting ensconced in Taoism. I have my worn out copy, the Tao Te Ching is right here. Here's my little Lao Tzu that sits on my desktop. So I actually try to have a daily, no, I'm not perfect, but I'm okay with that. But I try to have a daily Tao practice, you know. I try to randomly open up the Tao Te Ching and I read one of the passages and I just try to think about it for a little while. I try to do it before I get on social media or look up who's emailing me or anything. I just try to take a few minutes to put some of this into my brain and my spirit and think about it. So yeah, I'm guided by that. Right now, I read voraciously martial arts texts. I'm reading The Way of the Samurai right now, and I'll reread things over and over, pulling from all those things. And again, not to be cliched, but to pull from the Bruce Lee of, I try to learn all I can and then apply kind of what works for me. So yeah, I hang right in there, and I wish I was better at being Taoist and flowing with it. But then again, there's the beauty of the forgiveness that's in Taoism.
And I love that obviously you guys have talked and you admire and you love the livings and teachings of Bruce Lee. And every guest I've had on here with the martial arts background has said the same thing. But how, again, to kind of go back to the beginning, that your love of Bruce Lee and his ways of thinking and teaching and training led to you, Raphael, and Ninja Turtles, Scorpion, and Mortal Kombat. It's just crazy that one person can be almost like the godfather of all these ideas, whether it's pop culture, teachings, or even how you go into battle. It's just, for me, it just blows my mind that you don't have to be a martial artist. You could be an athlete, you could be a chef, you could be a parent, a doctor. You all can relate to Bruce Lee. And I find that very, very amazing.
Yeah, I mean, you know, like the thing is, I felt like if I could be more like Bruce Lee when I was a kid, that people wouldn't mess with me, you know? And I think that was a little unrealistic, you know? But I think that he had a charisma, you know, that was just super compelling, you know? And I became a really good student of the martial arts. I mean, I was dedicated. I still am. I mean, I never lost that dedication. And I think it was inspired by Bruce Lee, you know? And what a brilliant guy. I mean, he died at 32 years old, and look at the things he was thinking about, you know? That's a young man, you know?
Yeah.
And by the way, you're a young man, John.
I still feel it too, kind of.
But I think the things that he was interested in and the way his mind worked, his mind was very open, you know. And going back to the subject of acting, I think Bruce Lee was very believable in those roles, you know. It wasn't like he was acting, you know. He was those characters, you know. And so I think sometimes that's the way that people people do it. You know, I mean, who knows where he would have ended up? He was a young guy. Look at Jackie Chan. You know, like now, I love Jackie Chan in the new Karate Kid. You know, where he was playing a straight guy. You know, he wasn't doing anything funny or anything. He had a tragic character. You know,
Right.
and he's a really good actor. And then I forget the name of the other movie where his daughter gets killed in a you know.
Pierce Brosnan's the bad guy in it too, I think.
Yes.
Really good movie. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, he's just, you know, like, I just think he's lived so much of life now, and he's been in so many movies. There's very little, you know, of anything getting between him and that performance, being that character. You know, there's very little baggage, you know, and I love seeing that, you know.
Love it.
I think Bruce Lee, for me, like so many, he transcends his singular humanity. You know, he's like Jimi Hendrix in a martial arts thing. Like he came out, you know, Jimi Hendrix had a band, but Bruce Lee had movies. That was his act. And like Keith said, he wasn't really acting. He was bringing Bruce Lee to the screen. He brought his own ideas. He brought his ideas about developing, you know, understanding Chinese culture. He brought his own martial arts ideas to what he was doing. So he spoke his own voice, which was the true martial artist that he was. He was the brilliant Jimi Hendrix of martial arts. And for me, having just that poster on the wall from Enter the Dragon, where he's got the 4 like red streaks across his chest and he's kind of looking like this. At one time, that poster, it's got such a weird feeling because that movie's like so essentially 70s that it's got this kind of like spooky but heroic kind of feeling. It's like repulsive yet attractive at the same time for so many reasons. You know, this beautiful athlete of a man is standing there and he's facing death with the blood. And so as a kid, it's just like, man, that's mythology come to life right there. This little guy is obviously battling some dragon and it's all happening. And he is the dragon. So it's all like so perfectly circular. And so he transcended just being like Bruce Lee. What he had to say, the way he said it, the fact that it was a real statement. He was a martial artist who was acting. He wasn't an actor who learned martial arts, obviously. But it was more than just that. It was him using it as the vehicle to speak his truth. And his truth resonated so sublimely that the ring of that bell continues on out, you know? And so for me as a kid, you just see that mythological thing and it just drives you. I didn't know why. I didn't know that I wanted to be him or anything. I just knew that there was something. It was like having Perseus or somebody on your wall, you know?
I forget what interview I was watching, but someone was like, the interviewer asked the guy, who's the next Bruce Lee? And the guy's response was, why does there have to be another Bruce Lee when we could still chase the greatness of Bruce, what he was, what he embodied? I thought it was really cool. It's like, sure, there could be another Bruce Lee coming, and I hope there's 20 more coming. But it's still okay to follow the life of a guy that died way too young. That it was just a really cool response, and to see that again, respect to someone like Bruce Lee. Again, it's really humbling.
Yeah, and you'll never see another Bruce Lee because he crossed boundaries. He transcended boundaries that don't exist anymore. There's still more boundaries, of course.
Right.
But he brought, you know, the way Elvis brought music to a certain audience on a grand scale. Bruce Lee brought martial arts on a grand scale, on a global scale, you know, more than anybody else ever before that I can think of. And nobody will ever do that again because he did it. Now we're just walking the path, you know, maybe pushing it a little bit more.
Right. Now, before I let you gentlemen go, I do have a question for you both. Kenn, if you could be any Mortal Kombat character, who would you be and why?
Wow, I think that I would be Keith. You played Sub-Zero?
Yeah.
Yeah, you were and you were
the first one.
And Reptile, but you were Sub-Zero, right?
Yeah.
I think that I would be Sub-Zero because, like Keanu Reeves getting kung fu in the Matrix, if I could do what Keith Cooke does, I would feel fabulous waking up in the morning. So I'm going to say Sub-Zero.
Love it. And how about you, Keith? If you could be anyone in the Ninja Turtle realm, who would you be and why?
Well, I'm having trouble remembering the names, but if I could have played a character in that, I want to be the guy that was there with Ernie Reyes Jr. Who was
Casey
that?
Jones?
Coteas.
Casey Jones.
Coteas played the role, but I don't remember the character's name.
Oh, Casey Jones.
Yeah,
The guy with the hockey mask. Yeah.
that was a really cool. That was a really cool role, and he played it really well too. By the way,
Yeah.
he's a really good actor.
Yes.
Ken actually shared a good story about that. How the one guy, stunt guy, was actually injured, which kind of led to Ken's story. But like, it was really cool. Like, that it is a great character.
Yeah.
And like Keith said, Elias is a great actor. He was in a movie called Some Kind of Wonderful with Eric Stoltz, and unfortunately I can't remember the girl's name right now. And he played like the shaved head punk rocker at the high school. And I saw this movie, I mean, years before Ninja Turtles, or at least a little bit before. And I just remember going, man, that guy, that character was just awesome. He just leapt off the screen. The best thing in the movie. And then one day I'm working on the set of Ninja Turtles and I feel somebody squeezing my foot. And I look down and this guy who I've never met looks up at me and he goes, hey, I like your shoes, man. And it's that guy, Elias Koteas from The Thing. And he's just trying to figure out what his character would wear. But I just met him and I was like, oh my God, you're that guy. So it was really interesting. Steve Barron, the director, made really interesting choices. He made, sort of anti-Hollywood choices. Yeah. He didn't get like, a runway model to play April O'Neil. He found a beautiful girl in Judith Hogue. He got Elias Koteas, this quirky kind of Daniel Day-Lewis-like actor, to play Casey Jones. So I think that's some of the stuff that made that film so unique too.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, you're both on social media. I know, Keith, you joked about ramping up your social media, but if people want to reach out to you guys, where could they do that, starting with you, Keith?
Keith Cooke Studio at Instagram. The Cooke has an E on the end. Like I said, I'm not on that often. I'm getting ready to post some more stuff. And
you have been posting some really cool, like we talked about earlier, your tournament stuff, some of your wushu stuff, and the behind the scenes stuff, and the reel you put together for Alita, the choreography for that, the actress there, like stuff like that. I think people are really gonna love, and hopefully you can kind of throw it out there, because I think people really do appreciate the work you put into your life so far.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm going to post another fight that I don't think anybody's seen it, because we shot it for a pilot that never got picked up. So I'm going to put that up soon.
Right on. And Ken, obviously, I was listed on your website the other day. I had to order a couple of books for some cousins, but you're on social media as well. But where can people reach out to you if they want to get in touch or just support you and your book?
Well, you can certainly, if you want to check out the book or anything else, you get in touch with me, you can go to turtleconfessions.com. Outside of that, you can find me on Instagram. I don't spend a lot of time doing it, but when I go to cons, and I'm getting ready to go to Belgium this coming weekend. When I go to cons, yeah, that's going to be great. I'm sure the inside of the Belgium Convention Center, the Brussels Convention Center, is going to be fantastic. But when I go to the cons, I usually do an Instagram sort of burst where I take pictures of like interesting characters that I see and costumes and cool celebrities that I'm meeting and stuff like that. And then when the weekend's over, I disappear for a while. But that's Kenjitsu, and it's KENNJITSU, Kenjitsu. That's on Instagram, so people can check that out.
And hopefully you can start bringing Keith out to some of these things, so we can walk around to a Santa Claus with a scorpion mask holding a shopping cart full of diapers. Well, yeah. This has been great, gentlemen. Thank you for this. Stay safe. I wish you all the success, and we'll do it again soon.
Hey guys, John, it's always an honor to be with you. Keith, it's an honor to talk with you and be here with you today, guys.
It's really nice meeting you.
Awesome. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you all for checking out this week's episode. Once again, I'm John. If you like what you heard and saw today, subscribe to our YouTube channel, find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and check out our brand new merch store with hats, coffee mugs, t-shirts, other cool stuff coming down the pipeline. Again, thank you all for support. Be safe, and see you next week.